The keys felt heavier than usual in my hand as I stood outside my apartment door. Something was off. The familiar scratch marks near the lock were gone, replaced by pristine brass and fresh paint. My stomach dropped before my brain could process why. "Can I help you?" A voice startled me from behind. A woman in yoga pants clutched grocery bags, staring at me like I was a burglar. "I live here," I said, gesturing with my useless keys. "No, I live here, just moved in last week." She shifted her bags, eyes narrowing. "Are you looking for the previous owners?" Previous owners. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. I own this apartment. My husband and I bought it 3 years ago. Oh. Recognition flickered across her face. "You must be Cassidy." The realtor mentioned something about a complicated situation. "I'm really sorry, but the sale was completely legal. I have all the paperwork." The hallway started spinning. I grabbed the wall for support, my wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. "Sale? What sale?" "Maybe you should talk to your husband." She edged past me, quickly unlocking the door, my door, and disappeared inside. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking as I called Ethan, straight to voicemail. Of course. I tried again, pacing the hallway that suddenly felt foreign and hostile. "Cassidy." His voice was careful, controlled. "I was about to call you. Someone's living in our apartment, Ethan. Some woman saying she bought it last week. Tell me this is a mistake." The silence stretched too long. "Mother needed the money for her medical treatments. You know how bad her arthritis has gotten. The apartment was the quickest solution." "The apartment I helped pay for? The one with my name on the deed?" My voice rose with each question. "How did you even manage to sell it without my signature? Remember those papers you signed last month? For the renovation permits?" The memory hit me. A stack of documents he'd brought home late one night, asking me to sign quickly because the contractor needed them first thing in the morning. I'd trusted him, like I always did. "Where am I supposed to live?" The question came out small, broken. "Mother suggested we take the guest room at her place until we figure something out. It's the least she can do, considering." "Considering what?" "That she convinced you to sell our home behind my back." The pieces were falling into place. Karen's increased visits, her casual mentions of how cramped our apartment felt, how we deserved more space. "Don't be dramatic, Cassidy, this is temporary. Once Mother's treatment is paid for—" "Stop saying Mother like she's some sacred being whose needs trump everything else." I was shouting now, not caring who heard. "We're supposed to be partners, Ethan. Partners don't do this to each other." "You're upset. We can talk about this later when you're calmer. I have a client meeting in 5 minutes." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, then at the door that used to be mine. Our 5th wedding anniversary was next week. I'd been planning a surprise dinner, had the restaurant booked and everything. Now I stood homeless in a hallway, betrayed by the man who'd promised to put me first, manipulated by a woman who'd spent years undermining our marriage while smiling to my face. My phone buzzed, a text from Lily. "Still on for coffee tomorrow?" I typed back, "Change of plans, need your guest room, and a lawyer." The response was immediate. "What happened?" I looked at the new welcome mat outside my old door, the one Karen had always hated. "I'll explain everything, but first I need to make some calls, starting with the bank that holds our mortgage. If they thought I'd just roll over and accept this, they didn't know me at all. This wasn't just about an apartment anymore. This was war." Lily's guest room felt like a prison cell, even with its fancy Egyptian cotton sheets and aromatherapy diffuser. 3 days of living out of my suitcase, and the walls were already closing in. "You need to eat something," Lily said, setting a plate of toast on the nightstand. "Starving yourself won't fix this." I pushed myself up from the bed where I'd been scrolling through rental listings. "Karen called again, says she's worried about me, wants to have lunch to clear the air. And Ethan?" Radio silence since that first call. I grabbed my phone, pulling up the text thread. "Wait, no, he just messaged. They're moving my things to Karen's today. Apparently there's plenty of room in the basement." Lily's face darkened. "The basement? Like you're some piece of furniture they can just store away? That's exactly what Karen wants. I stood up, pacing the room. You know what the worst part is? She's been planning this for months. The contractor who did her kitchen renovation told me yesterday she paid him in full using money from our apartment sale, 3 weeks before Ethan even had me sign those fake permits. Jesus. Lily sat on the bed. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. An email from my biggest client. I opened it, then immediately wished I hadn't. They're terminating our contract. My voice sounded distant, hollow. Apparently someone informed them about concerns regarding my stability and reliability. Karen? Has to be. She's on their board of directors. I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. 5 years of perfect work gone because my mother-in-law decided I needed to be taught a lesson. The doorbell rang. Lily went to answer it while I tried to steady my breathing. Moments later, she returned with Sophie, Ethan's sister, whose face was flushed with anger. I just came from Mother's house, Sophie said, not bothering with hello. You won't believe what she's doing. Converting my life into kindling, I asked. She's redecorating your old apartment, says she's going to rent it out herself, use the income for her medical expenses. Sophie made air quotes. The arthritis story? Complete bullshit. I checked with her doctor. The room tilted slightly. What? She's fine. Better than fine. She just booked a cruise for Christmas. Using your money, I'm guessing. I sank back onto the bed. Does Ethan know? He knows whatever version of reality Mother feeds him. Sophie sat beside me. But listen, there's more. Ryan called me yesterday. Ryan? I hadn't heard from Ethan's older brother since he'd stormed out of a family dinner 2 years ago after Karen had accused him of stealing their father's watch. He's been gathering evidence. Bank statements, recorded conversations, everything. Turns out Mother's been playing this game for years. What she did to you, she did worse to Ryan's wife before they divorced. My hands clenched into fists. Why are you telling me this? Because Ryan wants to help. He's got connections, lawyers, investigators. Says it's time someone finally stood up to her. Lily, who'd been quietly listening, spoke up. Cassidy, this could be your chance to fight back. I thought about my apartment, my client, my marriage, all systematically dismantled by a woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to controlling her son. What's the catch? No catch, Sophie said, just justice. Ryan's willing to meet tomorrow if you're interested. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ethan. Mother says dinner at 7. We need to discuss the living arrangements. I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it had edges, sharp ones. Tell Ryan I'm in, I said, standing up. But first, I have a dinner to attend. Time to show Karen what happens when you back someone into a corner. What are you going to do? Lily asked, worry creasing her forehead. I grabbed my coat, already planning. I'm going to smile and nod and play the perfect daughter-in-law, and then I'm going to burn her whole carefully constructed world to the ground. Sophie's smile was grim. Need backup? No, I said, checking my reflection in the mirror. For this performance, I need to fly solo. But tomorrow we start planning the main event. The coffee shop where I met Ryan felt too exposed, too public for the conversation we were about to have. He looked older than I remembered, worn down by the same forces that were now grinding away at my life. You look exactly like I did 5 years ago, he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. That deer-in-headlights expression when you realize what she's capable of. I opened the envelope, pulling out bank statements and photographs. How long did you spend gathering all this? Since the day she convinced my wife I was having an affair. His smile was bitter. Karen's specialty, creating problems she can solve by destroying relationships she doesn't approve of. The documents told a familiar story. Mysterious financial transfers, carefully orchestrated coincidences, relationships systematically dismantled. But one photo made me pause. Karen at lunch with my biggest client, dated 2 months before I lost the contract. She's been planning this for a while, Ryan said, watching my face. The apartment sale, your client, probably more we don't know about yet. Mother likes to be thorough. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Where are you? Mother's worried. Still checking up on you? Ryan asked. They both are. I showed him the message. I'm staying in their basement now. Karen's idea of charity. Classic isolation tactic. Next, she'll start suggesting you're unstable, maybe need professional help. Already started. I pulled out my own phone, playing a voicemail from Karen to Ethan I'd intercepted yesterday. I'm just so worried about Cassidy, darling. These mood swings, this paranoia. Perhaps we should consider getting her some help. Ryan's face darkened. You need to get out of there. Today. I can't. Not yet. I leaned forward. Tell me about the watch. He went still. What watch? The one Karen accused you of stealing. Sophie mentioned it yesterday. Dad's Rolex. He laughed without humour. Mother's favourite weapon. She claimed I stole it after he died, used it to turn the whole family against me. Truth is, she sold it herself. Used the money to renovate her kitchen. Like she did with my apartment. Exactly like that. He pulled out another document. Here's the receipt from the jewellery store, dated 3 days after she accused me of theft. A commotion near the counter drew my attention. Karen was there ordering coffee, her presence too perfectly timed to be coincidence. She hadn't seen us yet. Back door, Ryan muttered, already standing. Text me later. And, Cassidy, watch your back. She's just getting started. I slipped out moments before Karen turned around, heart pounding. Back in my car, I examined the documents again, pieces clicking into place. The renovation money, the missing watch, the careful manipulation of Ethan's loyalty. My phone rang, Lily. You need to come home now, someone's been in your room. What? Your laptop's gone. And that box of documents from your lawyer? Empty. I started the car, hands shaking. Karen was keeping me distracted. She must have had a key made. There's something else. Lily's voice dropped. I found this note on your bed. It says, ask Ryan about Jessica. The name hit me like a physical blow. Jessica, Ryan's ex-wife, the one Karen had driven away. Call Sophie, I said. Tell her to meet us at your place. And Lily. Don't let anyone else in. Not even Ethan. I pulled away from the coffee shop, catching a glimpse of Karen watching from the window. She lifted her cup in a mock toast, her smile saying everything. I'm always one step ahead. But she was wrong, because now I had proof, not just of what she'd done to me, but of years of manipulation. The question was, what would it cost to use it? My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ethan. Mother says you were at Sterling Coffee today, with Ryan. We need to talk. I turned off my phone, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Karen wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd forgotten something crucial. When you back someone into a corner, when you take everything they have, they've got nothing left to lose. And I was just getting started. The emergency room's fluorescent lights made Karen look almost vulnerable as she clutched her chest, Ethan hovering beside her like an anxious shadow. I stood in the doorway, watching the performance unfold. The doctor says it's stress-induced, Ethan said, not quite meeting my eyes. She collapsed right after you left the coffee shop. How convenient. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Karen's hand fluttered to her throat. Cassidy, dear. I know we've had our differences, but to suggest I'd save it. I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. I just got off the phone with Jessica. The monitor tracking Karen's heart rate spiked. Ethan's face went blank. Jessica who? Ryan's ex-wife. The one your mother drove to attempt suicide 5 years ago. Ring any bells? Karen's performance faltered for just a moment. Ethan, darling, I think the stress is affecting your wife's judgment. Perhaps she needs professional help? I stepped closer. Like you suggested to Jessica's family after you planted those prescription drugs in her car? Or like you're suggesting to Ethan now? Mother! Ethan's voice held a note of uncertainty I'd never heard before. She's clearly unwell, Karen said, reaching for his hand. Just like that horrible brother of yours, spreading lies. I have the police report. My voice cut through her words. And the toxicology results. Jessica's lawyer kept copies of everything. Funny how history repeats itself, isn't it? First Ryan's wife, then me. The door opened and Sophie burst in, face flushed. Cassidy, we need to talk. Now. In the hallway, she thrust a folder at me. Look what I found in Mother's study while everyone was rushing to the hospital. Inside were documents, bank statements, medical reports, all forged with careful precision. A paper trail designed to make me look unstable, unreliable, possibly dangerous. She's building a case, Sophie whispered, to have you committed, just like Jessica. I closed the folder. Where's Ryan? That's the other thing. Sophie glanced around. He's gone. Disappeared right after your coffee shop meeting. His phone's dead. A nurse approached. Mrs. Brooks is asking for her son. Through the window, I watched Karen whisper something to Ethan. He straightened, then turned toward the door with purpose in his stride. Cassidy. His voice was eerily calm. Mother's doctor wants to discuss some concerns about your recent behavior. I bet he does. I backed away. Let me guess. He's the same doctor who diagnosed Jessica with paranoid delusions. This isn't about Jessica. He reached for my arm. You need help. We all see it. The only thing I see is history repeating itself. I jerked away. Tell me something, Ethan. Did you know about Jessica? About what your mother did to her? His silence was answer enough. Mrs. Miller? A security guard appeared. Please come with me. Doctor's orders. Sophie stepped between us. She's leaving, now. Sophie, don't interfere, Ethan warned. This is for her own good. I met Karen's gaze through the window. She smiled, that same triumphant smile from the coffee shop. But this time I smiled back. Check your phone, I said to Ethan. He pulled it out, frowning at the screen. I'd sent him everything. Jessica's police report, Karen's forged documents, the proof of her systematic destruction of anyone who threatened her control. It's all lies, Karen called from her bed, but her voice held a tremor now. The truth's in your hands, I said quietly. The question is, what are you going to do with it? The security guard stepped forward again, but Sophie blocked his path. Touch her, and I'll have this hospital's licensing board on speed dial before you can blink. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Karen? Ryan's not missing. He's at the district attorney's office. Turns out attempted involuntary commitment under false pretenses is a serious crime. The heart monitor's steady beep turned erratic. This time it wasn't an act. As I walked away, Ethan called after me. Cassidy, wait. But I kept walking. Some bridges once burned light the way forward. The district attorney's office felt colder than I remembered. Ryan sat across from me, his expression grim as he spread photos across the table. Each one showed Karen with different members of the hospital board, spanning years. She's been building this network for decades, he said. The doctor who tried to commit you? He's handled 3 similar cases in the past 5 years. All women who threatened her control. I picked up a photo of Karen with the hospital's chief of psychiatry. How deep does this go? Deeper than we thought. Sophie burst through the door, waving a USB drive. You won't believe what I found in Mother's computer. The files loaded onto the screen. Detailed dossiers on every woman who'd ever dated her sons, including me. Financial records, medical histories, personal secrets, all weaponized to maintain control. Jesus, Ryan muttered. Jessica's file is massive. A knock interrupted us. Ethan stood in the doorway looking exhausted. Can we talk? Alone? Ryan tensed, but I nodded. 5 minutes. In the hallway, Ethan paced. Mother's being released tomorrow. She wants to have a family dinner, clear the air. Clear the air or clear the board for her next move? She's different now. The heart scare changed her. He reached for my hand. Please, Cassidy. 1 dinner. Like the dinner where she convinced Jessica she was unstable? Or the one where she drove Ryan away? I pulled back. How many times are you going to let her play this game? It's not a game. His composure cracked. She's my mother. And I'm your wife. Or did you forget that when you helped her forge my signature on those commitment papers? The silence between us felt like a physical barrier. I never signed, he started. Don't. I pulled out the document Sophie had found. Your signature's right here, next to the doctor's recommendation for involuntary psychiatric hold. His face drained of colour. She said it was for your protection, that you were spiralling. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The attachment made my blood freeze. Security footage from the hospital parking lot, showing Karen walking perfectly steady moments before her collapse. Still think she's changed? I showed him the video. She's playing you, Ethan. She always has been. Mrs. Miller, a police officer approached. We need to discuss the break-in at your apartment. Break-in? Someone accessed your old residence an hour ago. The new tenant called it in. He glanced at his notes. The only items missing were your personal documents and laptop. Ethan's phone chimed. His face went pale as he read the message. Mother's calling an emergency family meeting, he said. Tonight. She says she has proof of your instability. Of course she does. I laughed, but it felt hollow. She just stole it from our apartment. Ryan and Sophie emerged from the office. We've got something, Sophie said. Mother's been embezzling from Dad's estate, using the money to buy influence, pay off doctors, including the one who declared Jessica incompetent, Ryan finished. We can prove it. Ethan looked between us, his loyalty visibly wavering. I need time to think. Time's up, I said quietly. Your mother's making her move tonight, so I'm making mine. What are you going to do? I checked my phone. Another message, this time from Lily. Karen just left your old apartment, heading home with a box of your stuff. I'm going to that family dinner, I said, and I'm bringing receipts. Cassidy. Ethan reached for me again. You have until tonight to decide whose side you're really on. I turned to Ryan and Sophie. Get everything ready. All the evidence, all the witnesses. Jessica agreed to testify, Ryan said. She's flying in tonight. I nodded, feeling something shift inside me. Not just anger now, but a cold, clear purpose. Then it's time to show Karen what happens when you push someone too far. This will destroy her, Ethan warned. No, I said, walking away. She destroyed herself. I'm just making sure everyone sees the wreckage. Behind me, I heard Sophie tell Ethan, choose carefully, brother, because after tonight, there's no going back. She was right. After tonight, nothing would be the same, and maybe that was exactly what this family needed. Karen's dining room felt like a stage set for the final act of a tragedy. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light, throwing shadows across faces that had become unrecognizable to me. Ethan sat at his mother's right hand, avoiding my eyes. I'm so glad we could all be here, Karen said, lifting her wine glass. Family should stick together in times of crisis. The manila envelope I'd brought sat heavy in my lap. One move, and everything would change. But Karen spoke first. Before we eat, I have something to address. She nodded to Ethan, who produced a thick folder. We're all concerned about Cassidy's recent behavior. Are we? Sophie's voice dripped acid. Or are you concerned about what she knows? I have documentation, Karen continued smoothly, of concerning patterns. Paranoid accusations, erratic decisions, potential self-harm risks. Like Jessica's documentation, I interrupted. The name fell like a bomb into the perfectly arranged setting. Karen's smile never wavered. Dear, I think you're confused. Jessica had genuine mental health issues. The dining room door opened. Jessica herself walked in, followed by Ryan and 2 police officers. Do I? Jessica asked quietly. Or did you just need me out of the way? Karen's hand trembled slightly as she set down her glass. This is a private family dinner. Officers, I don't know what you've been told, but they're here about Dad's estate, Ryan said. The money you've been embezzling to pay off doctors and judges. Ridiculous, Karen turned to Ethan. Darling, call our lawyer. Already did, Ethan said, but he wasn't looking at his mother. He was staring at a document from my envelope, the forged commitment papers bearing his signature. He's on his way to represent me. For the first time, Karen's mask slipped. What are you saying? He's saying it's over. I started to rise, but Karen's next words froze me. Show them the video, she commanded. Ethan hesitated, then pressed play on his phone. The security footage showed me in our old apartment, rifling through Karen's desk, pocketing something that glinted in the low light. Theft, breaking and entering, Karen listed. And that's just the beginning. Officers, I'd like to press charges. That's impossible, I whispered. I never. The timestamp is from yesterday, Karen continued, while you were supposedly at the district attorney's office. The room spun. The footage was perfect. Every detail exact, down to the clothes I'd been wearing. But I'd never been there. It's fake, Sophie protested, but doubt had crept into her voice. Like the evidence against me? Jessica asked sharply. Check my phone's GPS, I said to the officers. I was across town all day. Your phone was here, Karen smiled. I have the tracking data. My phone, which had disappeared during the hospital chaos, which had mysteriously reappeared in my purse hours later. You planned this, I realized. All of it. The hospital, the stolen documents, everything. It was a setup. You did always underestimate me, dear. Karen's voice held almost genuine pity. Officers, I believe you have what you need. One of the police officers stepped forward. Mrs. Miller, we need you to come with us. Ethan, I turned to him desperate. You know me. You know I wouldn't. But his face had closed off, that familiar shuttered look when choosing between his wife and his mother. I don't know what to believe anymore. As the officers led me toward the door, Karen's voice followed. Don't worry, dear. We'll make sure you get the help you need. The last thing I saw was Ethan still staring at those commitment papers as his mother's hand came to rest possessively on his shoulder. Sophie and Ryan's protests faded behind me, drowned out by the sound of handcuffs clicking shut. I'd thought I was ready for Karen's worst. I'd been wrong. She hadn't just outmaneuvered me. She'd turned my own plan against me, using my allies, my evidence, even my husband as weapons. The police car door opened, and with it, the terrible realization. In trying to expose Karen's manipulation, I'd walked right into her biggest trap yet. And this time, there might be no way out. The interrogation room's fluorescent lights buzzed like angry wasps. 48 hours in custody had taught me one thing. Karen's influence reached further than any of us had imagined. The door opened. Detective Morris entered, followed by someone I hadn't expected. Ethan's lawyer, James Chen. Your husband sends his regards, James said, setting his briefcase on the table. And this. He slid a USB drive across to Detective Morris, who plugged it into his laptop. Security footage filled the screen, the same footage Karen had used against me, but this time the timestamp data was visible in the corner. Corrupted. The metadata's been altered, Morris said slowly. Recently. By someone with access to the building's security system, James added. Someone like, say, the property owner? My heart skipped. Karen still owns the building. Mrs. Brooks has been very busy, James continued, producing more documents. These are the original bank records Mr. Brooks asked me to review last year. Notice anything interesting about the signatures? Morris examined them, his expression hardening. They don't match the ones we have on file. A knock at the door. Sophie entered, followed by Jessica and, surprisingly, Karen's personal assistant, Linda. Linda has something to share, Sophie said quietly. Linda stepped forward, trembling. Mrs. Brooks asked me to doctor those security tapes. She has dirt on my family. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, Jessica's voice was steel. I learned that the hard way. Morris's phone buzzed. His eyes widened as he read the message. Karen Brooks was just arrested at her home, attempting to destroy evidence. What evidence? I asked. Everything, Sophie said. The original security footage, financial records, emails coordinating with corrupt doctors. She was burning it all when they arrived. And Ethan? The question caught in my throat. James cleared his throat. Mr. Brooks provided the warrant. He's been working with us since the dinner. His mother's actions with the commitment papers finally opened his eyes. The door burst open again. Ryan entered, looking grim. Mother's asking for you, Cassidy. Says she'll only talk to you. Morris nodded. Your choice, Mrs. Miller. Karen sat in her own interrogation room, her perfectly manicured facade cracking at the edges. She smiled when I entered, that same calculating smile I'd grown to hate. Come to gloat, dear. Come to understand. I sat across from her. Why? All of it. Jessica, Ryan, me, your own children. Children leave. Her voice turned bitter. Husbands die. But control. Control stays if you're smart enough to keep it. Like you controlled Dad's death? Ryan's voice came from the doorway. I hadn't heard him follow me in. Karen's mask slipped completely. How did you… Linda kept everything, Mother, including the emails about Dad's medication. For the first time, I saw real fear in Karen's eyes. You can't prove… Actually, Ethan stepped in behind his brother. We can. I found Dad's real medical records, the ones you hid from us. I did it for you. Karen's composure shattered. Everything I did was to keep this family together. No. I stood, finally seeing her clearly. Everything you did was to keep yourself from being alone. But look around, Karen. Where did it get you? She lunged across the table, but the officers were faster. As they restrained her, she screamed, "You'll never understand. Love isn't enough. Control is everything." You're right, I said quietly. I don't understand. And I never want to. Outside, Ethan waited. Cassidy, Don't. I held up my hand. You chose her. Every time until now, you chose her. I know. He looked broken, lost. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that. No, I said, feeling strangely peaceful. You won't, because I'm choosing myself. I walked away, leaving him standing there. Sophie and Ryan flanked me as we exited the station into a world that felt somehow lighter, clearer. What now? Sophie asked. I thought about Karen's words about control, about love, about family. Now, we learn how to be free. Behind us, Karen's screams echoed through the station, but they couldn't touch me anymore. Some victories don't look like revenge at all. Sometimes they look like walking away. The courthouse steps felt different under my feet this time. No more uncertainty, no more fear, just the weight of choices and their consequences. Karen's sentencing had drawn a crowd, reporters, curious onlookers, and faces I recognized from her web of manipulation. Jessica stood near the entrance, her shoulders straight, her eyes clear. She nodded as I passed. Inside, Ryan intercepted me before I could reach the courtroom. There's something you need to see. He handed me a folder. Found it in Mother's safety deposit box this morning. Inside was a single document, a contract dated 3 years ago. My signature was there, perfect in every detail. Except I'd never seen it before. It gave Karen full power of attorney over my assets in the event of my mental incapacity. There's more, Ryan said, but wouldn't meet my eyes. The account numbers? They're from my private offshore holdings. The pieces clicked into place. You helped her forge this. I needed her to trust me. His voice hardened. To let me close enough to find evidence about Dad's death. And me? Was I just collateral damage in your revenge plan? You were supposed to be stronger. He finally looked at me. Like Jessica wasn't. The courtroom doors opened. Sophie emerged, her face tight. They're ready. Karen sat at the defendant's table, still somehow maintaining her aristocratic posture. Ethan was 2 rows behind her, a ghost of his former self. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away. The judge began speaking, listing Karen's crimes. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, attempted involuntary commitment under false pretenses. The years added up like body counts. Before sentencing, the judge said, would the defendant like to make a statement? Karen stood, turning to face the gallery. For a moment, I saw what she must have been once. Beautiful, fierce, terrified of losing control. Everything I did, she said, was to protect what was mine. You'll understand someday, Cassidy, when what you love starts slipping away. No, I said, standing. I already understand. You never loved them. You just loved owning them. The sentence came down, 15 years. No possibility of parole. As they led her away, she called out to Ethan, but he didn't move. Outside, reporters swarmed, but Sophie cleared a path. Ryan tried to follow, but I stopped him. "The offshore accounts," I said. "Make it right." "Cassidy. Or I'll make it right for you." He nodded, understanding the weight of choices and consequences too. Lily waited in her car, engine running. Ready. Almost. I turned back to the courthouse steps where Ethan stood, looking lost. "I filed the divorce papers," he said quietly. "I know. I'll never be free of her, will I?" "That's your choice now." I touched his cheek one last time. Like this was mine. The sun was setting as Lily drove us away, painting the city in shades of amber and shadow. My phone buzzed. A message from my biggest client, offering to reinstate our contract. Then another from Jessica. "Dinner soon? We survivors should stick together." "Where to?" Lily asked. I thought about Karen's words about understanding, about protection, about love, about Ryan's betrayal and Ethan's weakness, and how revenge never looks quite like you expect. "The art studio on 5th, I said. "I have a meeting about a new project." "Starting over?" "No." I watched the courthouse disappear in the rearview mirror. Starting fresh. There's a difference. My phone buzzed one last time. An unknown number. The message was simple. "You were right. About everything. Linda." Attached was a video file. Karen years ago mixing something into her husband's medicine. The final piece of evidence we'd never found, delivered too late to matter for the sentencing, but just in time to remind me that justice and revenge aren't always the same thing. I deleted the file without sending it to Ryan. Some truths serve no purpose except to perpetuate pain. And I was done with other people's versions of justice. The studio's lights were on, waiting. Through the windows I could see blank canvases ready for new stories, new beginnings. Not a happy ending. Those don't exist in families like the Brooks. But maybe something better. An honest one. I stepped out of the car, leaving behind the echoes of vengeance, carrying forward only the lessons learned in its pursuit. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well, on your own terms, in your own truth. The studio door opened, time to paint my own story.